The most important lesson that I learned is freedom comes with responsibility. Freedom gives you a lot of options. One of them is to be productive, and I think that that's the best one that you can choose.
No unicorns, no brands, just hard-working people who built their business from the ground up, sharing their experience so others can learn. Presented by Larissa Feeney from Kinor, this is Real Business Conversations.
Hello, my name is Larissa Feeney. I am CEO and founder at Kinor Finance and Business Services. Today, we're delving into one of Ireland's international success stories, with an online business based in Dublin leading a digital team working around the globe. We'll find out about the challenges of a fast-moving tech business, about building relationships with customers you never meet, and some great advice from a business planner with a wealth of experience. It's a pleasure to welcome CFO of MailerLite, Martin Ruano. Martin, can you maybe tell me how MailerLite began?
Okay, MailerLite began in Lithuania in 2010. It was in the early days a website designer agency. And at some point, one specific customer started asking for some help to deploy email automation product. So that's how the company started almost 50 years ago.
Okay, so it didn't actually start as an email marketing company. Was it a design company? Is that what you said?
Yes, it was.
So then it was a response to a customer need that the company pivoted as such to provide email marketing.
Exactly. That was exactly the case.
Oh, that's really interesting. So that was 2010. And then you joined as a CFO when?
I joined as a financial manager 10 years after that in 2020. But it's interesting because I was the first member of the finance team in the company. During the first period, almost 10 years, the company used to work with external accountant in Lithuania. So when I joined the company, the goal at that moment was to deploy a globalization strategy, moving the company to the US and getting more exposure in a global business. So that's when we took ownership of finances internally and how my journey began.
So you were the first strategic financial hire then?
Yes, and I would say not only strategic, but the first one really, there was no other internal colleague working at finance at that moment.
And okay, so the first internal hire. And do you remember, Martin, whenever you started, how many people were working in the business at that time?
Yes, I was in number 70.
Number 70. Wow. So there was 70 people in the business before there was an internal finance person appointed.
Exactly.
Wow. They did well to get to that size, didn't they? Without some internal support.
They did amazing.
Yeah. Well, okay. Fantastic. And and the numbers have grown now from 70 to about 160 at the moment. Is that right?
Yes, we are 160 at this time.
So maybe we can start by talking about the team, because what's fascinating is that MailerLite, just like Kinor, is a remote first company. And we have a lot of media attention at the moment around employers looking to get teams back in the office and, the shift away apparently from remote work. How do you guys find not being in person?
Well, the company started with a office in Lithuania. The founders and the first colleagues were based there. But at some point, there was an opportunity of one of our colleagues, Silvestre, wanted to do some trip to Asia. And it was a good idea at that moment because they said, okay, we can work remotely in that case also, and having a colleague based in another time zone is going to enable our capabilities of providing support to our customers. So that is how the experiment started a long time ago, before it was cool or before it was a requirement for pandemic or something like that. And from there, our founders saw a lot of advantages about this way of working remotely, building a global team, taking advantages of all the strengths and talent that they could find around the globe. That requires a lot of attention when it comes to finding the right people with the right mindset, not only skills, but it's not difficult it's not easy, to work remotely. It's not for everybody. You need to be prepared. You need to be sure that you have the right tools and the right environments to be productive. And I think that our management team did a great job providing clear guidelines about what is needed and the resources and how to establish a synchronous environment for us to be successful.
And I completely agree with you, by the way. I frequently use the term intentional remote working, that intentionality around being remote, so that you don't happen to be working from home. You have a role that's intentionally remote, and it is harder than an in-person role. And it doesn't suit everybody. You're right. And companies and individuals have to go a little bit further to make sure that the relationship works and that it works, the team works well together. Can you tell me about some of the things MailerLite do to make sure that remote working works?
Well, in first place, I think that the key was that everybody feels that despite that we are working remotely, we have a deep feeling of being part of the company, of something bigger than us, that we have the right tools to connect with each other, that we can also use the freedom that we have as a booster of our productivity. So there are a lot of tools or procedures or ways of schedule our meetings only if necessary, avoiding Zoom fatigue, for example, or wasting time in unnecessary calls. I think that the most important thing is that we don't try to replicate the office kind of relationships in a remote environment. We don't need to be in 5 meetings or 5 calls per day, because that is not going to be productive for us. We don't need to replicate that. We go for asynchronous work. We have a fluent communication in Slack channels. We know that our team is not working at the same time, everybody. So we give time to other colleagues to reply, to review a message and take some time to work on it. That is something very important, something that I experienced in previous opportunities, is that probably somebody receive a message and feels that need to reply instantly, and that is not the case. And an advantage about this also was that, for example, when we need to discuss a new idea, rather than starting a brainstorming session like you would do in an office, we start a document, for example. So we do that in writing. That also put a lot of different personalities at the same level. In a meeting, you will find that people are more extrovert, and probably they are taking all the focus in the meeting. And probably somebody that is more introvert could send a comment by email or keep it for themselves. And working in a remote environment provides the same opportunities for everybody. Probably are more kind of a shy or introvert, but I can review a document, put my thoughts together, have time to reflect on what I really want to say about that, share a more powerful idea or a better way to replicate my thoughts.
I think that's a really interesting perspective, and you're absolutely right, where in an in-person environment, an individual who's naturally extroverted would be seen and heard quite easily, where an introverted person wouldn't be. And I've seen that ourselves, where especially among the juniors and the trainee members of the team, those that wouldn't have as much confidence yet, they're just as visible in a remote environment as they are in an in-person environment, which is very interesting. Do you guys, Martin, bring people together for in-person events at all?
Yes, we do. In fact, I just returned from our annual meetup that was in Barcelona 180 people we've been together during the week. It's something always important for us to have that kind of meetup, not only for bonding, but also to have the opportunity to really work together and to spend a week fully focused on our business, on our processes, and probably giving a space for some interactions that are more difficult to have in an online environment. So yes, we meet once per year. In the past, we used to meet twice per year, but given the size of the company at this moment and the resources required to plan it and to make it a successful event, we are doing these meetings once per year. So we just came back from our global meetup. We call it workations.
Workations, I love it.
Yes, a combination of work and vacations, and we did it last week in Barcelona.
And can you share some insights into what you felt in that week that you guys spent together, in terms of the relationships that you built with your colleagues? Do you find that it helps overall in a remote environment to meet in person sometimes?
Yes, it helps a lot because it enables us to share more about ourselves, about not only about our personalities, our different qualities, but also about our processes, about the challenges we are working at, and we have the opportunity to discuss that during a hiking session, for example.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and that change in the environment, I think that brings a lot of creativity that is very, very valuable for any company.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love it. And people must have come from all over the world then, because you have people. Do you have any clusters anywhere in the world, Martin, or are they all spread out?
No, we still have the small office in Lithuania where our colleagues that are based there could meet, or if anybody is traveling around could stop for a moment. But basically we are 160 people working out from 40 different countries.
Okay, that's and I'm interested in, whenever you joined the company, it was a team of 70, which is still a sizable team, isn't it? And where the company is now with 180 employees, what has changed for you in that, in terms of structure? You've obviously grown your team, for example. Has the structure changed enormously over that time?
Yes, the structure changed a lot. For example, I mentioned at that time I was the only member in the finance team. We are 4 now at this moment. And I have colleagues working from Ivory Coast, Spain, Egypt. And well, I think that this growth also is related to the evolution of our products. We were able to add key people in different areas, supporting the product growth. That was the main areas that I can mention.
And as your team have increased, how have you personally dealt with that in terms of delegation? Do you find it easy to delegate tasks to your team, or do you struggle with that?
No, I find that extremely easy. I think that is also necessary. We had a lot of things that we can delegate, and also it's very important because for me as a manager, that is something that enables me to keep my team motivated. Delegating tasks that are complex, where we need to think together a way to resolve it. We have a lot of challenges and new projects anytime. So each member of my team is going to take care of a different area or project that we need to review and we need to implement. So I think it's a key area for motivation to keep the people interested in what we are doing.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. I suppose if freeing yourself up as well to concentrate on more strategic aspects of the finance function or of the business as a whole. In terms of your journey over that time, so going from being the first internal hire right now to leading the team and leading the finance team, how have you developed your own skills and management, Martin? What do you do to help you lead a team?
Well, I think that at some point I needed to. I had an advantage somehow myself because I've been working remotely for several years now, from 2006. So at some point I came to this role with some skill set that enabled me to work remotely and also to empower people to be able to work in that way and probably to understand which are the specific challenges. But after that, I think that something important for me is to keep learning. That is very important to understand that I won't be able to solve all the challenges in front of me. That's why we need a strong team to face those challenges together. And also, it's very important to know how to find help when you need it. And that help sometimes could be external. You need to get in touch with an advisor or with somebody that has some specific knowledge that could help us to sort a specific situation.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And that comes up a few times whenever I speak to business owners, the importance of bringing external advice into the business and that objective view. And even from a personal perspective, Martin, even if it's not really directly brought in by the business, sometimes having that objective opinion in your corner can be really helpful when you're making decisions.
Yes, totally. And I think that regarding that, we also have a strong management team with so diverse areas of knowledge and personalities that sometimes I find myself asking for advice to colleagues or to my managers or people that I know that could point me in the right direction in a specific situation. And also about talking about advice, or sometimes it's about a specific knowledge that is very difficult to have. We are running a global business, and we don't have all the knowledge at any moment that could help us to sort a specific situation that could raise in a different country or base and in a specific regulation. So that is also something that we know that we need to have access to that advice also.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And on that point, the fact that MailerLite is a global business and works in different markets around the world, could you give us some idea of the number of customers that you guys work with or the number of markets that you operate in?
Yes, we are operating in more than 130 countries. So far, we have supported more than 1 million users of our software.
Wow, that's amazing. So 1 million users, 130 countries. Who is your biggest competitor, Martin?
The leader in our space is MailChimp.
And in terms of comparing MailerLite to MailChimp, it's size-wise, would MailChimp be much bigger?
Yes, they have bigger revenue, bigger market share. Yes, they.
Well, congratulations so far. I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing growth. So your customer is any business that sends email marketing. Is that right?
Yes, that is right. Our focus always was to provide a simple but powerful solution. And by simple, I mean that our customers don't need to be an expert on email marketing or coding to be able to use our features. They have access to a simple solution that could help us to deploy their strategies without losing focus in their business. And I mention this because most of our customers are SMBs or entrepreneurs, authors, coaches, professionals that probably are not mainly focused on email marketing. They are not part of the marketing team. They wear all the hats that they need to do, and MailerLite is here to provide them a very easy to use solution, but powerful with very nice features to have a successful email marketing strategy.
That's fantastic. And it's so important, isn't it? I mean, for a small business owner, an entrepreneur or a founder who doesn't have the time, as you said, wearing all the hats, to be able to use something that's simple and effective. So that's fantastic. Well done on the growth so far. What are the future plans for MailerLite in terms of growth?
The future plans at this moment is, well, to increase our customer base for sure, to keep evolving our product, making sure that we stay up to date in all the trends and we continue deploying strong products. I think that there is a lot of opportunities in terms of AI, for example, in our space. And also we are now part of a bigger group, because MailerLite was acquired by another company, Vercom, in Poland 2 years ago. So we are part of a bigger portfolio of resources and a stronger offering from this group. So I think that there is a lot of opportunity of synergies between the different products and features that we have as part of the Vercom portfolio at this moment.
I'm really glad you brought that up, actually, because I was going to ask you about the sale of the company. I mean, that was a big deal 2 years ago. The company was sold. Can you maybe talk to us about that process, the transition from, essentially what was a startup in 2010, had grown into a significant company, a scale up as such, and then was bought out. And for you in your role, how did that transition go? And it obviously, was change. And how did you manage that change, and how did the team respond to it?
Well, I think that was an amazing process because, as you say, we were working as an independent company. We were no longer a startup, but we still had that culture. We keep our culture to that date. I think that is the most important thing. But during that process, we had to work on due diligence, and we had to share all the product and the information, and the result was very successful. So personally, in my role, it was very an accomplishment to see that all that we created in our team was good, was well done, and contributed to this transaction. But also being part of a public company, we need to have regular audits from external accounting firms. We had audits from KPMG, BDO, and that was also very satisfying during these 2 years, being that all the processes and all the information and the way that we have to work was up to the standards, meeting all the standards for a public company in Europe. So it was a great process so far. I have to say that also there was not a big change in terms of culture. We are able to continue working the way we've been working so far, but we have now bigger plans for the future, if I can say it that way.
Yeah, you have, I suppose, a partner there who can invest and probably has deeper pockets than you would have had if you were acting alone. Would you have any advice, Martin? Because the mergers and acquisitions market is quite active, and it happens all the time where companies merge and one buys another out. Would you have any advice for somebody that's going into the process or going through that process that would help them make it a success?
Yeah, I think that the most important advice it would be to plan in advance. Maybe you are building a procedure, you are building the internal practice for finance or for legal or for product development, but think about that possibility, plan ahead. Think that probably in 1 year or in 2 years, you are going to be successful and you will need to go through that process. And at that point, it's very, very difficult to change things or to correct something that probably was not done in the best way. I remember implementing our accounting in the US entity, for example, from the first transaction, doing the first journal entries myself for subscription payments to test how that is going to work. But always the focus was to do it right, to make it audit ready, despite it was happening 2 years in advance when meeting that situation. So that would be my advice. Things that you are going to go through that process, do it right from the beginning, think big.
Yeah, and plan, as you say, plan it out and be prepared. And you've also had another change. I mean, the company was bought over, which was a big change, but you also changed your financial system as well, didn't you, from QuickBooks?
Yes, we did. We migrated from QuickBooks when I implemented our accounting in US and in Ireland. We implemented QuickBooks Online at the beginning, but then we outgrown QuickBooks capability as our business growth. And also, well, we were talking about MailChimp before. MailChimp at some point was acquired by Intuit. So
Okay.
it felt a bit strange hosting all our financial information with our competitors. So that was the right moment to migrate to a different tool. And after reviewing several of the options available, we go with Oracle NetSuite. That really is working amazing for us. What a great improvement for our process.
I think that's really interesting, insight whenever you said that you had outgrown the capabilities of QuickBooks, because every business chooses a system that's right for them right now, and that's fine. And usually businesses will start off with QuickBooks or Sage or Xero or something similar, and those systems will only take you so far. What were the clues or the red flags in terms of the QuickBooks functionality that led you to think that, okay, it's time now that we moved on?
Well, in our personal case was the quantity of transactions that we were processing on a daily basis, the available resources that QuickBooks offered us to process that batch of transactions. Was not possible to do that directly, but we needed to trust on third-party integrations. So deferred revenue accounting was not the best for the kind of business we were running. So I think it's a great tool, maybe for smaller companies, entrepreneurs. It's very friendly, very easy to use, but we needed to have something more robust and more complex for the kind of business we were running at that moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that your advice around planning in advance for any change actually, applies to that as well, because a system change can be hugely disruptive to the day-to-day business and hugely disruptive to the team if they're used to working on one system and they have to try to get used to another system. How did that all go for you?
It went very well. I have to say that I think that we did it at the right moment. That is very important. And I say this because probably in my early days, that wouldn't be an option. Go straight with NetSuite. Let's skip the QuickBooks process. It's an expensive tool and it's not easy to implement. So I was able to do it just after having a team supporting me and bringing additional expertise to the table to do that. We've been working on a migration process that took around 5 months. And we had to set up the tool for all the different complexities and particular things or components in our business, in our pricing, in our subscription schedule, in our tax setup. So I think that having a team with a specific knowledge and being able to consider this as a team initiative was the most important thing. So yes, you need to plan ahead, but probably you can implement SAP when you are creating a product SAP. It's not possible.
Yeah, I always say to clients, that we underestimate the amount of time that it takes and the amount of resources that it takes. So I find it interesting that you said that it is a team initiative, but that you brought in external help as well to navigate that. So that was important in terms of making sure it was a success.
Yes, totally. That is true. We were working in first place with the Oracle implementation team. But when I said bringing external help, is just because at that moment I was hiring another team member from finance, and the focus was in finding someone that could bring that specific skill set that have worked with NetSuite implementations and migrations before. So yes, it was external, but it was showing in as part of our team.
Can you tell me what has been the most important lesson that you've learned over your career in MailerLite as you've been managing that growth? What's the most important lesson?
The most important lesson that I learned is how important it is to take accountability working in a company like this. Freedom comes with responsibility. Freedom gives you a lot of options. One of them is to be productive, and I think that that's the best one that you can choose. And also I learned that communication is key to be successful in this kind of working environments. So if I had to choose, I would say that being able to communicate with your team is going to be a key area to be successful in this kind of environment.
Yes, I think, I love those two. Working remotely, personal accountability is key for success, and communication both ways, from the employee and from the company is really important. You mentioned Slack, Martin, that you guys use Slack. Is Slack your main tool for communication with your team?
Yes, totally. And we make sure that we do a good use of it, really. And we have a lot of channels that are created to support this kind of communications. We have product or processes dedicated channel, but we also have a kudos channel to say thank you to the people that is helping you or is adding value on a daily basis to your role. I think that is very important to give and to receive thank yous in terms of motivation and to show everybody what we are grateful for. We have channels to share about moments where we feel proud. It could be customer feedback. It could be something in our teams that was an accomplishment. We have a channel called Moment of the Week where we can share something important that happened during the last days in our life and we want to share. So I think that we take seriously when I talk about communication and to give feedback and to share what is happening as individuals and as a team member.
And in that aspect sounds very much like an in-person environment, trying to recreate the connections with the other individuals and trying to build those relationships. So together with the in-person events and the communication that you do, you probably find that you do build relationships with your colleagues, even though you work very far away from them.
Yes, absolutely. We had situations where we schedule a meeting just to have dinner together. So somebody is going to share a typical food from their country, is going to provide in advance the ingredients and the recipe, and we are going to start preparing that together via Zoom at the same time, and then having lunch or dinner together. Something interesting, for example, that happened during the pandemic is that we were not able to meet as a team. So instead of workations, we used to have staycations, as we call it. We used to do the same things that we do in person, including sharing, for example, recording a movie with a specific theme, 5 minutes movie, and having a movie night where all the team were together seeing that movies that each one of us created for that specific moment. We play games, board games, or similar games through Zoom. So we try to deploy these kind of activities that enable us not only to bond, but also to have a deeper relation and get in touch with colleagues that probably are not part of our daily activities.
Yes, your core team. That sounds fantastic. And one last question for you, Martin. Can you think of a piece of advice that you'd give to a younger person who's going into a similar role that you went into and has similar ambitions to grow within that role?
Yes, the main advice is that keep learning every day. Keep learning is very, very important, especially if you want to scale up yourself and get ready to deploy more complex activities or grow a business. Stay curious, stay learning, and always don't be afraid of ask for advice or ask for help. Count with your team, count with anybody that could give you a good piece of advice. And then be patient. If you do it, everything will be fine and will come.
That is great advice. Thank you very much, Martin, CFO of MailerLite. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Larissa. Nice to speak with you.
Thank you for listening to Real Business Conversations with Kinor. For more information on this episode, see the description area of this podcast or visit our website, kinor.com. Remember to press follow on your podcast player now so you get a brand new episode every single month. This podcast is produced by dustpod.io for Kinor Finance and Business Services.